We're joined now by David Chernushenko. He is running for council in Capital Ward. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good morning. Pleasure to join you.
So tell us, well, I mean, it's always, you're the first incumbent I've interviewed this time, so normally it's introduce yourself. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are running again in Capital Ward.
Well, apart from the obvious, although not necessarily obvious to people who are either new to the ward or don't follow municipal politics, I am the incumbent. I'm councillor for the last 2 terms. I come from a very green background, both capital G. I was active with the Green Party, but I actually left the party about 10 years ago now. And I wanted to be nonpartisan when I entered municipal politics, and I've stayed that way. I think that's really important, that we don't have larger parties starting to muscle their way in on municipal politics, as we're starting to see now with a couple of the candidates are endorsed by big parties. But more importantly, who am I? I come with a very strong emphasis on sustainability, on quality of life, on healthy, active living, and giving people the tools to do that. You can't just say, go out and live actively, ride your bike, take the bus, if you don't actually make that practical for people. And so a big part of my reason for being on council is to make that possible, to make it appealing, to invest in the kinds of infrastructure and services where people, see possibilities, choices available to them that might be an alternative to the old way of doing things.
So what are some of the, maybe look back a little bit and what some of the big things you've seen as successes that you've worked on over the past 4 years and what you see coming ahead as well?
Yeah, it's actually funny you should ask that, because I'm not a braggart by nature. I'm not someone who's out there
it's bad to be in politics then,
out.
Yeah.
Apparently it is. I actually had someone once who was a political sort of analyst saying, David, your year-end report in your column talked about your wins, your losses, and your ties, and you were honest about things that you haven't yet achieved and you really want to work on. And I just figure that's me. That's what you're going to get. That's who I'm always going to be. I'm going to be honest. But that can play back on you, because a friend was at a street party just this weekend, and she said, what she was hearing from people was, yeah, I like David. He's a nice guy. He works pretty hard, but I'm not sure what he's actually done. And so I just recorded a radio spot last night called What's He Done For Me Lately? Which is having some fun with the fact that I actually need to remind people. I've got 2 sides of an 8x10 sheet just in point form of the things we've done. So to answer a big project right now, people are going to see really soon, is the Flora footbridge across the Rideau Canal. That's something people have been waiting 100 years for. It's something that wasn't actually supposed to be built for 5 more years, but I was able to push to get it advanced, to get the funding from the other levels of government. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Yasser. To make that possible. Safer here on Bronson, right near Carleton University, after a tragic, cycling fatality. We were able to get some major changes, safer crossings, the beginning of true cycle tracks along Bronson, the beginning of, because we've got to do the rest of Bronson now, and on affordable housing. Not enough, but a couple of key projects here in Capital Ward now. Today is a bad day to say the LRT, because it's been delayed by a couple of months, but let's remind ourselves that pretty much every major rail project worldwide is years behind schedule. Not that we wanted to be behind schedule, but that it be 2 months later in order to be safe and fully completed when it opens. I'll stand on that.
It's more like a year at this point. But it seems to me with that one, the challenge, and this is certainly not on you, but with LRT has always been expectations management. That I think people would have understood that it was going to be a little delayed, but if you said, we're literally digging a tunnel through downtown, but to have the date changed 3 times is what really frustrates people.
Well, date changed twice, not 3 times, but still, that's May was the first date where the city was very cautious not to announce a date, because there's so many unknowns, and all we have to do is say sinkhole and on Rideau Street, so many unknowns. So May was the first announced date, and then November was what we were really aiming for, and we had unfortunate news yesterday too. But you know what? As I said yesterday at the finance committee meeting, I said I actually thanked our staff for being honest with us, because what would typically happen in an election? Our staff would say, oh, we think it's still fine. We think we'll make it. And guess what? November, 10 days after the election, they would say, oh, what a shame. We're behind schedule. Or we would know, and we would cover that up. And after the election go, oh, what a shame. There's a budget overrun. Oh, I wish I'd known that. I think that's dishonest. I would rather go out on the doorsteps now and say, it's still, further away, but it's going to be fully built, and it's going to be safe and tested when it opens, rather than rush it in order to please people with meeting our deadline.
So let's look ahead to the next 4 years. What are some of the big things that are coming up? It seems that Bank Street, as an example, and the stretch in the heart through Capital Ward is experiencing some transition, particularly on development issues. There's the Fifth Avenue Court redevelopment, which has been very controversial. There's been some tensions over in Old Ottawa East with the redevelopment around the Oblates lands there. What are some of the things you're looking ahead to, and what you want to keep working on it?
Yeah.
If you should be elected for a third term.
I will answer your question on the Old Ottawa East and Greystone Village and Main Street. Actually, there's been remarkably little tension. What's been amazing is that this is one of the few cases where a really well-written, thorough community design plan was written. As I came into office, we completed that. It was started by others, and it's been almost entirely stuck to. Little minor changes to it, not the wholesale. Hey, 65 stories where it's zoned for 8. That'll be fine, right? That'll be fine, right? And Main Street has literally revitalized the neighborhood. That was a traffic sewer that people were scared to walk along it and cross it. Now you've got restaurants opening up on it and opening cafes on it. So I use that to say that's what we want more of, and that's what I want to keep pushing for. We have a plan for the south of Bank Street, south of Billings Bridge, half of which, the west side, is in Capital Ward. There is a plan to essentially complete street makeover of that part of Bank Street. Not in quite the same sort of urban downtown way, but in a way that will really change what's right now a suburban strip mall kind of a street. But the top priorities for me are, one sounds like it's inside baseball. We've got a new official plan coming out. Well, what does that mean to most people? The official plan is what essentially creates the ground rules for everything from transportation to affordable housing to the urban boundaries, how far the city spreads, what infill is going to look like. That's a real opportunity now that we were able to, and I will blow my own horn a bit, I worked to get with Yasser Naqvi and others to get the Ontario Municipal Board reform through. Now we no longer have the OMB hanging over us as the place where everything we do will get appealed to. For the first time ever, our official plan cannot be appealed. When council passes an official plan, it sticks. For the last 6 years, our previous official plan, it's still under appeal. So all the rules we set aren't in play at the moment. So that's a really important time. So I'm pushing for a green, official plan that will give planning certainty to people. And a key part of that has to be affordable housing. That's right at the top of my personal agenda. We're falling further and further behind. There are people who are desperate for quality housing, for health and quality. I don't mean expensive, fancy housing. I mean housing that's safe and healthy to live in. And the city, although it has a very small part of the tax base, only 9% of what you pay in taxes goes to the cities. Most people, there was a Nanos poll that showed people think it's something like 22%, and we're surprised here it was 9. We can't do a lot with our own money. We count on other levels of government, but what we can do is make it mandatory that at rail stations, the air rights above those stations are available for affordable housing, that the first kilometer around them be available for affordable housing, or we can use something now called inclusionary zoning. That's a relatively new tool. So I can go on and on. I'm deep into this, but I'm full of passion.
Well, let's shift to as we have these conversations, we're asking the same questions to all the candidates. And so
sounds fair.
Yeah. The first one is, when was the last time that you took the bus?
About 3 days ago.
Okay.
I'm a very keen cyclist, so I cycle whenever I can, but I've got my bus pass and I use it throughout the winter when I can't skate.
Well, that seems to be...
I'm probably the only councillor in the world who can speed skate to his job.
Yes, I suppose. That was probably the case. Because you have both sides, I guess, eh?
Yeah.
The second one is, what's the best civic space in Capital Ward?
Best civic space in Capital Ward. It's becoming Main Street. It's becoming the area around the St. Paul University, the big square there. Otherwise, civic space. I hate to say Lansdowne. That's okay. There's so much still antagonism about Lansdowne, but it's not nearly what it could have been, designed better. But it's still, on a sunny day, on a game day, on a market day, it works well as a civic space. It's unfortunately underused, underpopulated at other times. So. Brewer Park, across the street from my house. Thankfully, that's one of the reasons we bought where we did.
So yeah. I guess the flip side is, what's something that's in another part of the city that you would like to see come to Capital Ward?
Part of the city, come to Capital Ward. I love the little parkettes and mini squares. There's some in Westboro, my recollection. Is it sort of Piggy Market or something like that it's called? That's a neat little one like that.
Churchill Square, maybe? No, that's not.
Yeah, I love seeing these because there's no longer big spaces apart from your occasional, once in a lifetime, LeBreton Flats kind of opportunities. I have to remember, actually, in the Greystone Village development, there will be a large urban park opening there, which will be public park, not a privately owned one. But for the most part, it's rare we have the opportunity to build great new big spaces. They're often small ones. So we need to seize those opportunities. So those are a couple that come quickly to mind.
What's one part of the city budget that you would like to, one thing maybe, that you'd like to cut or spend less money on?
I would like to cut entirely what we call in the sports world trinkets and trash. All those little hands-out things, fridge magnets, fold-out, cut-out things, little squeezy balls, keychains that go home. That's relatively token in the sort of the amount of money spent on it, but it's the kind of thing that I just think, really, is there not a better way to communicate than handing out stuff which is almost certainly destined for trash?
So you've kept away from those in your office budget?
Not a thing.
Yeah.
When the media does their annual or every couple of years, how many T-shirts? I don't even have a campaign T-shirt. And again, maybe shoot myself in the head, but I'm just not someone that produces stuff that's got campaign signs. I'd say is my one exception where you just can't campaign without them. But I really try to avoid that stuff. Wasteful, vehicles idling. Got to crack down on that more, and that's about our own city staff taking some responsibility, some pride in being part of our own air quality, climate change commitments. So did you ask what we should spend more on, or am I still looking for? Yeah,
that's the next one. That's the next one. What you want to spend less on is the one thing. But
yeah,
trinkets and stuff is.
And definitely, roads widening on the false assumption that it's going to reduce traffic congestion. Never will, never has. Every study shows that. Never widen a road for unless there's some other reason, which I don't know of, than alleviating traffic congestion. It just attracts more traffic.
So this is the easy one. What would you like to see the city spend more money on?
Yeah, that's the one where I say, where do I start? Affordable housing is one that I named. Although affordable housing, a big part of that, as I was saying, is about good policies and using them. Our own parks maintenance is one. We're really falling behind as a city in parks maintenance, something like $60 million behind. One that I don't want to spend more money on, but seems really obvious, is sidewalk repair. That one I do want to spend more money on. Road repair, I hate to have to say it, but then I have to remind myself when I'm on my bike or in a bus or in my electric vehicle, I need the road to be in good shape too, and so do most citizens. So don't build more of them, but keep the ones we've got in good repair, and all kinds of social services.
So if presuming people don't find you on their door, what's the best way of getting a hold of you?
davidc.ca is my website. Email and telephone are my preference. I know there's a whole lot of people still tweeting and using Facebook. I've found them, for the most part, all I have to do is say Trump Ford, and I can keep going to that road to say. Often there isn't real dialogue going on there. When people do try to reach me on Twitter, the first thing they get is, hey, give me a call. Give me a time and a place. I'll come by and talk to you. I'd rather have a real conversation with people, and I can't do that with my thumbs at 280, characters. Be glad to try and meet people on their doorstep or
and so that shop. Email is on the website?
Yes, it's david@davidc.ca.
That's nice and easy.
With a name like Chernushenko, you go with
David
C.
You got to keep it easy.
Yeah.
Starbucks and election signs are the two places that are tough for you, I guess. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.